Okay. Hey everybody, my name is Sean. This is training on the Lutron lighting control system. The lighting control system we're going to be talking about today covers the common areas primarily. So down here on this level, we're talking about the ballrooms, the meeting rooms, the pre-function corridor out in front. It actually also controls one suite of admin offices, the one on the far end of this level. That's on the system as well. On the floor above, we are controlling the main lobby, the main restaurant, the pub, the, what else up there? The vestibules, the library, and then the terraces and the entire exterior. So no guest rooms, no guest floor corridors, but pretty much anything else that's common area or exterior, and no back of house, but anything else we're going to be covering today in this training. For the sake of the video, again, my name is Sean, and my phone number is 919-270-0919. If you have any questions, you can call me on my cell. You can also call Lutron's 1-800 number, which is 24/7, and that's 1-800-523-9466. So those are two places you can reach out to. So, lighting control. This is what we would call a centralized system. We've got a lot of dimming panels back of house in the electrical spaces. So we have large dimming panels that control all the lights, and your access to the lights out in the spaces are preset keypads or scene keypads. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to build lighting looks. That's a combination of all the lighting levels in the space, and then we're going to save them to a single button, so that way the staff presses one button and they get the preset look that's already been created. So they're not a bunch of dimmers that we're sliding up and down each time. In the common areas, all of those scenes will be preset and then associated with timers. So they'll all trigger automatically throughout the day based on sunset or whatever time to transition. And there's actually a dedicated visit to dial in all those light levels in a couple of weeks when we're a little further along, so that way they can match it to the furniture and the finishings and make sure it's all dialed in exactly. So that'll all be preset. There's also a computer that's managing all of this. It's in your MDF room. It stores all the scenes. It is where you access all the time clocks. It lets you make changes, things like that. It'll be on your network. This is just a website. Anybody with admin access and that has the username and password will be able to just type in the web address or save it as a shortcut or a bookmark in their web browser, and you'll be able to access this from whatever machine you use to access the intranet here. You'll be able to pull this up and access whatever your account has permissions for. Phones included? If it's on the right network. So that's a question for the IT department. If it's on the right network, anything with a web browser can access this, so long as it's connected to the proper network and has permissions set up and all that. So that'll be an IT conversation for later. So we're going to start with the ballrooms. And ballrooms are a little bit unique in that they have these partitionable walls. So we're going to treat the ballrooms as three small spaces, but they can operate together. So to give you a sense of the scenes, we've got a scene controller right here on the wall. Currently everything is set to default. So we have 5 scene buttons plus an up and down arrow. Oh, and actually, the electricians are working on this. That keypad is down. Let me see if another one is up. Pads are down because there's some work happening. So I'm going to manually kind of trigger the scenes from here and show you what that looks like. But there's 5 scenes. The bottom generally goes brightest to dimmest. So pushing the top button is going to trigger the brightest look on down, the bottom button triggering the off look. So let's take this off. Might be tough to follow along. But I've got a drop down on all the different floors and areas. One. I go to the lower level. I'll be able to open up the ballrooms. I've got the ballrooms here. It might be hard to see, but you can see 3 rectangles right in a row. And if I go into this ballroom, I get a lot of options. I can see alerts, I can see what's scheduled to happen here. I can see whether it's occupied or unoccupied. I'm going to go to the light. And The 5-button keypad that's on the wall, I've got a kind of a software version of it right here, and I can push these buttons. So I can push button 1 in here, which is mostly all on. Just so you can see most schematically, I'm going to push button 4, which is a pretty dim level. See that it dims down nice and low. Now, and then I can go up. These are all just default. But because I've got all these sliders for the different lights, I can build a look. So you noticed before when I went to 4, we got this with the cove kind of off, the cans are on, the pendant came down. We might want one that we can show a presentation at the front. So I might want to take the sconces on that on the far end. Down all the way off. So we got those sconces off. I might want to take the cans up front, turn them all the way off, so you can see the 2 cans closest to that. I may even want to take the pendant, the whole large fixture off, so that way we have no glare on a screen like this. I did that using the sliders here. That's only temporary. If I were to push that button 4 again, those lights would all come back up. But I've just got a simple save button. And I can save this look to button 4. So now, if somebody were to push button 1, the lights come back on all bright. But now, when I go to button 4, instead of going to that level they were at before, they're going to the level I just created. So what we're going to be doing in a couple weeks is going throughout the facility, dialing in those levels and getting them set up exactly the way that we want. One other kind of cool feature about the ballroom is we've got sensors in the ceiling that I'll show you that identify whether the wall is open or closed. When the wall is open, which I've just set the walls to be open, any button you press on one keypad is going to automatically be applied to the rooms next to it. So now, I'm going to push that same button 4 I pushed before. You can see we've applied it to the whole ballroom. If I push button 1, one button press on one wall, the whole ballroom responds. The walls know which one is for which room, so if you only close one wall, these 2 rooms would work together. And actually I can show you that if you want. So I'm just going to take one of the walls and set it to open and one to close. Now, if you push a button in one space, we control just one room. You can see that room's operating by itself. But these 2 rooms, oops, sorry, wrong button. But these 2 rooms now are going to operate in tandem with one another. So, however you set the walls is going to be how the wall stations react. It'll happen automatically. I'll show you the sensors because it's important to be able to, I want you to be able to tell the difference. So if you guys want to follow me this way. The sensors are right here where the walls come out. It's just like your garage door, the infrared beam that comes across. One of them, the one with the red LED, is shooting the beam out. That one's always red. That just means it's on and it's transmitting the beam. The key here is the one with the yellow and the green, or the orange and the green. That's the receiver. That's telling you that it actually sees the beam. Let me see if I can move these. You see the orange LED just went out. Now the system thinks that this wall is closed. It's going to treat these rooms as separate. Orange LED just came back on. Now it's going to treat the 2 rooms as open. So it's important, and you might not from that far away be able to see it at a little bit of an angle. If you stand right underneath it, you'll be able to see it. Okay. That was a crash course there. Are there any questions on, so again, it comes down to presets, which are not really defined yet. You do have a set of keypads in both instances, one here, one there. There's also keypad hidden in the partition rooms. I'm not sure the purpose of those, but back around here. Not in this one, there's only in that one. In that partition closet, there's another keypad hidden in there that just controls this room. You want to, like, I guess, be hidden and change the lights with no one knowing where you are, I guess. So, any questions about the ballrooms, how they work? We'll talk about the software later, but in terms of the buttons on the wall, anything like that, yeah.
So I can imagine like around different seasons you're going to change presets and everything.
That's up to you guys.
Well, the sun's changing it when it's going down.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like that. So when that's happening and you need to change the presets, you're saying the only, which it's easier to do it if you're sitting there on a tablet.
Yes.
The only way that you're going to be fortunate to do that is if that software connects with our server.
It's already on your server.
It already is on the server?
The software is running on a server in your MDF room.
Okay.
The question is whether the device you have in your hands, whether it can talk to that server. And that's a question for your internal IT department. As of now, I believe it's on the admin network. So anyone who has access to the admin network that gets access to this software would be able to access it. If it's a hardwired computer, then you're stuck in your office. If you have that on a laptop, you can set up your laptop here and open the software up and run it. And it's just a web browser, so you don't need any special software. You just type the web address into a web browser. It will only connect if your IT department has set it up in such a way that your device can talk to it.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The lights in the service vestibules?
Yes.
What do those dim with? Which light do those dim with?
They are by themselves currently. That's the way they were designed. I was going to move them and just connect them in with the ballroom that they're associated with. But yeah, that one single light, currently it's only controllable by the software. So like I can go into this service vestibule right here. Go out.
Yeah. Yeah, if we could connect with the ballroom it's associated with,
Yeah.
I think that would be.
Yeah, we'll do that. It was designed as a separate space, but with no wall station in it. So yeah, there's no way. I'll just move it in the programming and make it considered part of the ballroom. Absolutely. And I do want to, you had mentioned, like, as the time changes, the system does, it won't automatically change light levels, but on the timed events, like the pre-function areas and things like that, it does have an astronomical clock. It will adjust throughout the year based off of what time sunset is. So if the lights in the restaurant, for instance, are supposed to shift to an evening look, they'll shift to that evening look automatically and throughout the year and change depending on what time sunset is.
Based on sunset or
Yes,
based
based on what time sunset is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it uses the latitude and longitude of Charlottesville
Yeah.
to calculate sunset every night
No, that's smart.
throughout the year. Yeah. Are you guys working on the QS link? Okay. All right, any other questions on the ballroom?
Is the button system pretty much the same in all the rooms?
Yes, the button system is going to be exactly the same. The only difference, and the reason I wanted to start here, is because we have the added complication of the partitions. But all the ballroom, or all the rooms are the same. We can go walk into one if you want. But essentially, within the software, you'll see the same 5 buttons. And I can kind of walk this around, but you'll see the same. These are the 5 buttons on the wall, and we'll go into one of the rooms and play with it. These are the same 5 buttons, and then these are the actual sliders. You can imagine these sliders as if they were old-fashioned sliders on the wall. As you move them up and down, one group of lights moves up and down. You create the look by setting them how you'd like them, and then you can save them to one of the buttons. And once you save it to one of the buttons here in the software, it's immediately available to you on the wall by pressing that corresponding button on the wall.
Sales team, I think that that's what you need to know. So feel free to go.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for
Thank-
coming.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we'll be, again, in a few weeks, dialing in exactly what those buttons do. Once that happens, it'll be up to your team to decide whether you just want to lock them in and never change them, which I think is what it sounded like we're leaning towards, right? Is get them set once. That way your team knows exactly what they do all the time. They can always depend on this button does this. If you have an AV presentation, you push this button because it's going to turn the lights off over the screen. If you have a dinner, you push this button because it's going to give you a nice, even, low-level look throughout the space.
And we have designers on site today, so we can probably start doing that a little bit too. Some lobby level spaces.
Yeah, we could do some.
Yeah.
It's tough during the day. The night levels are much more important.
Yes.
And I'm not here tonight, but we have a dedicated visit built in just for that.
Yeah, and then let's confirm exact dates later
Sure.
today, once I get the photo shoot scheduled.
Perfect.
But yeah,
All right.
so right now, sorry to backtrack, is anything
Defaults, 175, 50, 25.
okay, cool.
Where to next?
We can do another meeting room if you'd like to see one. It'll be the exact same thing as we saw here. If you'd like, we can move up to the lobby and talk about the lobby and the restaurant.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Great.
Thank you.
We got reverse waterfalls.
I'm seeing them now.
I'm not sure. So the common areas are much simpler from your perspective, from the day-to-day perspective. Our goal in the common areas is going to be to lock in a day look, an evening look, a night look, set times that they trigger, and ideally you never have to think about it. As I mentioned before, the evening looks are going to transition based off what time sunset is, and that's going to shift throughout the year. So again, hopefully we dial those in such a way that they just move throughout the year in a way that you don't need to really think about them.
Does it adjust with being overcast?
It does not adjust, well, to some extent, yes. So, let's see, is there a daylight sensor somewhere visible in this space?
Not in this
Not in
area.
this. So when we go to the library, not so much for the main lobby. In some spaces you do actually have a little daylight sensor. I'll point one out in the ceiling that's looking out the window and dimming the lights if it's bright. It's really bright, bring the light up. That's more of an energy consideration than an aesthetic consideration.
Okay.
But it does have some of that. However, for the most part, we get it dialed in how you want it. There are master wall stations scattered throughout for the common areas. Those ones are typically paired with a key lock, which will get turned over. I imagine you guys have all the keys somewhere safe, right?
I do.
You have them already, perfect. So in those cases, it's a little bit like a nuclear launch, right? You put it in, we'll turn it, and then you'll push the button, and then you take the key out.
If I press the button, when does it automatically sync back into information?
The next scheduled time. So it could be all night long, right? If the last event of the day happens, and then you override it, then it'll sync back up the next morning. If it's something that's supposed to trigger it at 5 p.m. and you change it at 4:59, then you only get 1 minute before the system syncs back up. So it's not a very long time, and it's different based on exactly when you do it. I'll also point out, I didn't talk about it a lot downstairs, but there's the 5 scene buttons, which by the way will be lit up, so they'll be engraved. They'll say day, evening, night, and there'll be an LED next to the setting that you're in, so you know, okay, we're in the evening scene right now. There's a up and down arrow. That's just a master adjust. That takes all the lights in space and kind of bumps them up or bumps them down. You push the up or down arrow. We will go take a closer look at one of those details. let's see, keypad locations. The front, you've got one behind the front desk that does the lobby area. You've got one in the vestibule that only does the vestibule. I can change these if you want something different, but we try to keep them kind of as localized as possible. So in this front entry vestibule, there's a keypad there. There's one behind the front desk that's not installed yet. That's going to do the whole lobby area. There's one in the kitchen. It's going to do the restaurant. The one at the front desk, by the way, also gets this corridor down towards the pub. The library has its own keypad, and then the pub has its own keypad. Okay.
And then when we do the final scene settings and adjustments, it just goes without saying, given the open layout, there's going to be a continuity, right? So, and then in the evening and night, it goes to a restaurant-centric focus lighting setup. So where we don't want anything west of this to distract or impact from set. So when we go to adjust and set, we have to look at the entire space, because you never know where the lighting is. So it's also important to note, if we're doing adjustments or override, don't just look at it from a siloed perspective here. You have to take in full kind of lighting control into account.
Yeah, it's an added kind of feature of the open space here when you have think about what's going on the lower level, when you think about what's going on the upper level as well. We're going to be building long fade times in as well, so the lights will transition slowly during those periods, so that hopefully it'll be less disruptive for the guests in the space. They won't see a really drastic, quick change in the light level. I'm happy to show folks around the software if you want to play with the software at all. I'm not sure if there's any other questions about general. It might be easier to go somewhere. Well, I can do it on the iPad, or we can go somewhere where we can like sit down on a laptop and go that way. Whatever. If you want to see the software, if you're not interested, then we can.
I'll get you shown.
Yeah, we'll do it engineering. Again, I'm going to work with engineering a little after this, talk about more of the technical stuff, troubleshooting.
Yeah, but I think while we have some of the outside our meetings, we should do kind of, you know, those operational questions, right? I got to adjust this. How does that work? What does it look like? What does it impact? Any questions you have? Let's run through them now. The man will set it up, and then Sean's Diana.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
A primary on our IV side, she's going to be the one that actually dials in the scenes for this property. So it's good for you guys to connect. Right now, everything's just at 0, 25, 50, 75, 100. And the big kind of final adjustments aren't going to be made until nighttime, whatever that we refer to.
Yeah, we'll be here probably like the 29th, 30th. On through
I saw a box of them.
So it should probably be, if there's any questions you have, anything that's being controlled, not being controlled, needs to get added. Run through those. And how you're here through the end of the day today?
Through the end of the day today, and then I'll be back. And my intention was to come back out a few days before the scene setting, because there are some punch list items still.
Okay. Awesome. But that's looking like the first week in April.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
Okay.
And it's the same thing where we do different settings for day,
Evening.
afternoon, evening, and then cleaning.
Yep.
whatever. And then in terms of like manually adjusting it, only the person, like a general manager or someone can.
Yeah, we can restrict who has access to that. So there's two levels. We can talk about this later. Within the software, there are different access levels. So you could give staff the ability to change light levels, but not save them to a preset. So if a guest had a particular event or request, someone might have access to turn a light down, but they couldn't save it to override preset.
So that setting's only good for until the next clock change, right? So whether that's 2 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours, it's not permanent, but it allows operational flexibility to make whatever guest is happy. I have a feeling it's going to be a ride, so we'll do that. But yeah, in terms of the permanent final astronomical scenes, those are gonna be what you said. Yeah. But here it's just gonna be a lot, because we've got so many.
Oh, yeah, no, it's,
Yeah, I think I just wanna check with the restaurant team too, as to when they're like, you know, have all their stuff going in here, when those days are, if they're like fully populated. I think test meals are the 7th and then like the 10th, 11th. So it may be that during test meals, there's some revelation as to what like a lot works or is better. I don't know. Hopefully we'll figure that out.
Agreed.
There may be some final tweaking.
Yeah, so, and I guess, and that's a good question. So, we're gonna do our college best to make sure that in advance of the test meals, the scenes are as final as humanly possible. But given test meals are happening and they're bookending Easter weekend, you know, come the night of the 11th, there's one kind of adjustment, one stroke of life. Is that something we'll have the capacity to kind of adjust ourselves and then?
yeah, you'll absolutely have the capacity to adjust it yourselves. I can be available by phone. And it's on your network, depending on IT, they may even be able to.
Yeah, we can let you in. Yep. Okay. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's pretend we have a meeting going on in the library.
Yeah.
And they want full lights at 100%, 5 o'clock. What prevents the system so at like 7 or whatever evening happens,
Sure.
that's going to change and now I have to manually go change it?
So this gets a little more advanced, but let me show you. So here's the floor plan.
Yep.
All right. So what we would do is we would click on the library. You get a quick on, off, up, down.
Yep.
Okay. And this is assuming you've got full admin privileges. Depending on your privilege level, you may see more or less of this. But there's a little button here that says Area Dashboard. Okay. So I'll click on the Area Dashboard, and this is going to give me all the details about the library. I can see there's no alerts in the library, which is good. We'll get back to some of the stuff. I can see occupancy status, daylighting, that's that sensor that dims the lights if it's bright. There's a lot of stuff in here, but the important part is schedules. So at a quick glance, I can see that the next thing happening in the library is called Start Night, and it's
Okay.
happening at 7:21 p.m. tonight.
Got it.
So from a quick glance, without changing anything, I know that whatever I do in the library is going to stay that way until 7:21. And again, this is just a default. This is not at all what you're actually going to have.
Yeah.
But at this moment, the next thing happening in the library automatically is it's going to go to its night mode at 7:21 p.m. So if that's fine, that's fine. If it's not, again, depending on your access levels, you can click this schedule and you can actually look at a calendar here.
Yep.
And you can see that that night event happens
Got it.
every single night. Well, I don't want that to happen tonight.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to click on tonight's start night event, and it asks, do I want to open the occurrence or do I want to open the series? Sure. Okay. Same as outline. Right. If there's an event happening tonight and only tonight, I'm going to open the occurrence. That's tonight's only, right? And here's the details of the event. It happens, it's called Start Night. It's a sunrise sunset event. It happens at sunset. So that means that we think that sunset tonight is at 7:21. It happens because I opened the occurrence under the day that it happens. It happens one day, which is March 15th, 2023, today, because I only opened the occurrence. And then I can look down and I can see it's part of the common area schedule. Because if I see what's happening, I can actually see the corridor, the foyer, the process, the library, the lobby, all of those are going tonight.
Okay. So you can edit the
It's
location.
part of that, but I can take this library one,
Yeah.
click delete, and remove it. And now it's not part of the look, but it's only not part of the look tonight because I only opened the occurrence and edited the occurrence. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good.
Dumb question, but does it detect light bulbs are up?
It does not. Okay. We have systems that do that. Yeah, we not here.
Okay, got it.
This one does not.
Oh, actually, one other question.
Yeah.
Sorry. Downstairs in the ballroom, there's all those wall panels, you have controls to adjust the lights.
Yes.
If that's filled with guests and like there's a kid that wants to play with the light, is there a way to block that?
Yeah. So let's go back to the floor plan.
I used to be there.
Used to be a kid. So
Yeah, I used to.
Okay. Sure. That's some good life experience. So, I'll use the library since that's just where we were. So if you go into the dashboard of a space, so from the floor plan, if you click on a space and you click on the dashboard, that's how you bring up all the detail I was talking about within that space. We talked about schedules, we talked about lights. Well, there's one called devices. Devices is wall stations and things like that in the space. So again, I'm doing the library, but in the library, I have a control station, and it's currently unlocked. And if I zoom it out, in this case, there's 2 control stations in the library, but it's currently unlocked, meaning it works. It can be used.
And will that be locked until someone comes
So
back
you
to
come
it?
back in, so you could do the same thing in the ballroom. Any other questions? I think let's go into the electrical room and show what the panels look like. That may or may not be interesting for you folks, but I think it's important to do. Yeah.
Downstairs,
That's where the server is.
Okay.
The main brain, the processor, is actually in this electrical room right here. So that's where I'd like to go next. What was it? No, one more. This is the only one that has the Lutron processor. All right. This is the brain of the system right here. This processor. You can see this QSN link. There are low voltage links, 2 low voltage links leaving here. One that hits every single one of the panels, and one that hits all of the wall stations. So 2 home runs back to this point. Nothing you should ever need to access in here, just make sure it stays hot all the time. This is also, there's an Ethernet drop in here. That's what takes it to the MDF room, to the server that's running the software. Okay, so altogether, 3 things in here. Low voltage link to the panels, a low voltage link to the wall stations, and a Cat6 to the server. All right. There are alerts built into the software, so if one of these or a wall station stops responding, you'll get an alert and you'll know that something's wrong with that low voltage link. All right. I want to show you inside the panels, because this is pretty important. So this is a modular panel. We've got main feeders in the bottom, circuit breakers. For the most part, it's 1 breaker per module. That's not true with this one on top. This one on top is a relay module. There's 4 relays in here, and because each relay is a 16 amp relay, it has 4 circuit breakers for it. These are 1 breaker each. For this relay module, you can see everything here. We use labeling where an H means hot, and it means that's the breaker feed. An SH or a DH is switched hot or dimmed hot, and that means it's the output to the light. So up here you'll notice H1, SH1. That means the black terminal that's labeled H1 is the feed from breaker 1, and SH1, switch hot 1, is the load going out to the light, and it's switched. It's on off only. There's either going to be 120 on it or nothing. All right? Here, this second kind of chunk, you'll notice this black terminal is labeled H5. That's because it's fed from breaker 5. But you've got DH5, DH6, DH7, DH8. That means it's got 4 dimming outputs, numbered 5, 6, 7, 8. That 5, 6, 7, 8 will be important. You're obviously going to get, these are the as-built, you're going to get clean versions of these. Those numbers are going to correlate to these and tell you what loads are connected to that output. You've also got this set of what we call TVMs along the top with purple and gray. Anybody know what purple and gray means? 0 to 10. Do you guys ever work with 0 to 10? You're familiar with 0 to 10 volt? So 0 to 10 is it's getting more and more common, LED control technology. Essentially, it's a 4-wire technology. The 0 to 10 loads get a hot and a neutral to power them, and that hot and neutral are on if the lights are on, off if the lights are off, excuse me, right? And then you dim them using a DC 10 volt signal, and that's what these represent. So you can see how many 0 to 10 volt lights you've got. It's the majority of the lights in this building are 0 to 10. So what that means is these are actually not really dimming the lights at all. They're just providing them a hot. And then we're using a 10 volt DC signal to manipulate them up and down. If we send them 10 volts, they go to 100%. If we send them 5 volts, they go to 50%. If we send them 2 volts, they go to 20%. All right? So that's these up here. There's numbers along the top that correlate to the numbers here. So for instance, this pair is landed on number 2. That means it correlates to output number 2, SH2. So SH2 is providing power to that light, and this pair is providing dimming signal to that light. Make sense? Any questions on that? You might notice this little piece of plastic in here. That's called a jumper. If you don't remember anything else, you guys in particular, if you don't remember anything else from this conversation, remember the jumpers, all right? There are 5-terminal one, and then there's these 2-terminal ones. This is just a piece of metal with a plastic cap on the end, okay? There's nothing fancy about it. However, so we said this was H5. I'm gonna turn off breaker 5. This just gets inserted just like that and turned back on. What this has done is one of those little legs is grabbing the hot from the breaker, and it's just shorting it to the 4 outputs. Conceptually, this is the same exact thing as taking this breaker, taking a wire nut, and wire nutting it to the wires going out to the lights. You've taken this breaker and you've wire nutted it to your lights. They're on. What was that?
It's the same as going goes back.
Yeah. So we've just jumpered out the lights, and now you may as well not have a dimming panel. You've got a breaker powering lights, and that's going to make your troubleshooting life much, much easier, right? Because if it doesn't work now, the driver's bad, the lamp's bad, there's something electrical wrong. If it comes on, now you know, okay, there's something in the system. The system's not turning it on or something, and then we've got to troubleshoot it. And then when the time comes to pull it, I just like a small flathead. I find that works best for me. Yep. There you go. All right. Last thing I'll point out in the panels. Oh, this is the brain of the panel. So I told you that there's a low voltage link that connects this to all the panels in the building. That's this cable here. This white cable, as you can see, kind of runs through all of them. This guy is either fed from a dedicated breaker labeled C. That's nice when they do that. That just means control. And this breaker doesn't do anything except for feed this guy. Some of them, it gets tapped off of breaker number 1. We want this guy on all the time with that nice once-a-second blink. That means it's talking to the processor and it's happy and all that, all right? So this guy should stay on all the time. If it goes off, that software will pop an alert. So you, hey, one of our panels isn't working. So you want to keep that on all the time. And then the last thing I'll point out is that some of these panels are emergency panels. This is an emergency lighting interface. This is monitoring normal power. When normal power goes away, the emergency panels are all set. I'll show you what it looks like. So there's this little switch. You never want to touch that. This is what tells this guy that it's an emergency panel. Because things are hunky-dory and normal power is here, you got that once-a-second blink, everything's good. These lights are just operating, turning on, off, dimming up and down. It's actually getting a signal from this orange wire that everything's good. When that signal goes away, you can see it goes to override mode. Now this whole panel is on. So if you ever come across a panel that's in this ORD mode, it's overridden on because it thinks that there's an emergency. Okay? And then as soon as it gets that emergency signal back, you hear the relays clicking. And go back to normal operation. So look for that E, you know, it's an emergency panel. The emergency switch will be emergency mode. And there you go. Whew, okay. Your photo cell goes into that box up there. That you shouldn't need to access it, but in addition to the astronomic clock, your lights are going to turn on at sunset no matter what because of the clock. But on an overcast day, your outside lights could turn on earlier based on the photo cell. Any questions? Phone number is on the front of all these panels, the 1-800 number. So if you need any help, there. And then on the stickers, we do have a job number. It's right there, JN. You give them that job number when you call them, they'll be able to pull up all your information and help you that much better. You guys are always welcome to call me on my cell. I don't mind if you got questions. So. Any questions? I'll be back in a couple of weeks. I'm here for the rest of the day today. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. So if anything comes up, think anything, feel free to let me know.
Any questions?